Hey everybody, thank you for finding us here at Press A to Talk. Welcome to our show Backlog Crew, the show where we play through old games we've been meaning to get to and talk about them. My name's Kurt. I'm here with Joe
Hey,
and Ryder. So today we're going to be talking about the first half of Wario World. So we're going to be playing through the first two worlds. So some background on the game. This game was released on the Nintendo GameCube in 2003. It was published by Nintendo, but it was developed by a company called Treasure, who I wasn't familiar with, so I looked up sort of what else they worked on. And Joe, do you know what else they worked on?
I have no idea what else they worked on.
A lot of anime games. They made some Yu Yu Hakusho games and some Bleach and some other animes that I've never seen. But yeah, I thought it was funny that for whatever reason Nintendo brought in the anime guys to make the Wario 3D
They,
platformer.
they made Gunstar Heroes.
That sounds like an anime game as well.
I don't know if it is, but it's a fun game on the Sega Genesis.
Um, yeah. So the game opens up. There's a story, surprisingly. And it says, in ancient times, there's a black crystal, caused a lot of people to turn evil, fight each other because they were greedy. Eventually, ancient civilizations put their differences aside and hid it away in a temple so that no one could ever get it again. And then Wario, a treasure hunter, got it again. And then it decided to turn all of his treasure into monsters. So now Wario has to get all of his money back. This is about as nonsense as I need like a platformer story to be. Like how do you guys feel in general about casually platformer like Wario, Mario, Yoshi kind of games like needing a story?
I mean, this is like as much story as it needs. It's like a villain
Yeah,
appears and then Wario is cast into a world and has to defeat the villain.
yeah. It's like the Donkey Kong Country thing. Like hero is happy, bananas are taken. Go on quest to get back bananas. You know,
Pretty
it's
much.
you don't need much more than that. And then there's no story, I assume, until the end. There hasn't been any so far. So at the end of the opening cutscene, we get dropped into the hub world. Um, Ryder, did you have any thoughts about the hub world?
Um, I don't like
Just
it.
thinking, you don't like it? Why don't you like
I
it?
don't. So my experience with Wario comes from Wario Land, of
Hmm?
his spin-off titles that have a bit more meat to them rather than just like WarioWare. Um, and I guess I'm just spoiled. I don't know the word for it. Wario Land 4 was one of the earlier games that I played in my life. One of the first games that I can remember beating completely. And I kind of went into this game having those types of hopes for them. And uh, Wario Land 4, its overworld isn't super sprawling or massive or anything. It's pretty much the exact same concept as this. You know, Wario just kind of rotates around
World
and
map
goes to these
more
different
than anything.
worlds. Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that. But in Wario Land 4, and this kind of goes back to the last question about like the story. I don't need a super in-depth story or anything like that, but just the previous game handled it so much better. I played a little bit of Wario Land 3. That also, I mean, it's still this really short, sweet, almost goofy intro. But Wario Land 4, you know, Wario gets a newspaper that says there's an ancient temple discovered in the jungle, and he's like, "Got it, going for it." And then some wackiness kind of unfolds while he's there. I love that concept. It's really simple and like thematically it makes sense because each of the levels or worlds rather in the overworld is just a door into a different part of the temple, and
Mhm.
I like that. It's really simple. Uh, the third game, I don't remember too much about it. I know that same as far as the story goes, wackiness unfolding. Wario goes and tries to steal like a music box, and the music box sucks him into it because it's protected by some dark god. You know, this is like the Wario takes the fun goofiness of Mario and allows itself to kind of play with it a little bit more. Um, all that to say, the overworld that I remember from 3 and the overworld from 4 just make a lot more sense, even in the context of the game. the minimalistic story that is provided. And this, I just all of a sudden kind of fall into this sky castle area, and I'll get into this further with the worlds themselves, but it all just kind of seems shoved together. And there's parts, again, in Wario Land 4 that don't entirely make sense with the Lost Temple theme, but each world is more cohesive than what we're about to talk about. And I'll go into that in more detail in a bit. But I think, like I said, my expectations were a lot higher because I just absolutely loved Wario Land 4 growing up.
Yeah, you talked about the structure of, we'll just keep referencing that because it's a really good game, Wario Land 4, and how, there's 4 worlds, and you enter them, and there's levels within that world. We have basically the same structure here, but you're right. In Wario Land 4, it feels more like an environment that you're moving through where things are connected, and it kind of makes sense. Whereas in this, it very much just feels like a bunch of things mashed together. So you basically just are dropped on this like plate more than anything else, and you can run around the plate, and you can see World 1, 2, 3, 4. You have to beat the first one to unlock the second one, and so on. And they're very different thematically, but there's no like cohesiveness there. It's just sort of a gate opens, and you're in a new environment that's floating in the sky, and so that is kind of weird. But then as far as like entering the levels, it kind of reminds me of Sly Cooper, where you enter like a unique environment, and the levels are like in this sort of hub world area that you can run through. The problem here is there's not really anything to do. It's cool set design, but it's ultimately there's nothing to interact with. You could just run from door to door, and you wouldn't be missing any content. You know what I mean? They're nodding, everyone. Okay, so that's basically what the hub world is. Just, I don't know, it's kind of cool looking, but you just walk up. There's nothing really to it.
It's almost like they just took a world map from a classic Mario game, where in original Mario games it would be like World 1 is like a plains area, World 2 is a desert area, World 3 is snow area or something, and they just like let you walk around in that. And really, the only thing you can do is in front of like the treasure chest area, where they have interactive statues where you can like punch and play like Game Boy Advance games on it once you unlock the treasures. But I assume we'll get to that.
We'll talk about that in a second. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the worlds, or to the levels rather. So I'm getting twisted up. So there's 4 worlds that you have to get through. Each world has 2 levels and a big boss at the end. Each level has 3 sets of 8 treasures. It's simpler than it sounds when you say it out loud. But basically, you get into level, we'll call it 1-1, and there's treasure chests, gold statue parts, and red diamonds. As Joe mentioned, the treasure chests have treasure in them. If you collect all 8 treasures within a level, you unlock some WarioWare microgames that, as far as I understand, you can play by hooking up your Game Boy Advance to your GameCube with like the link adapter. Honestly, that's a really cool concept. I love WarioWare. I think probably the WarioWare on GameCube is one of the most fun party games that just exists, period. And so the idea that you're getting to like get a taste of that in this other game is really fun to me. But also as someone who never really had the Game Boy Advance link cables, I don't know that I ever once knew this existed as a child. I guess I should say I played this game a little bit as a kid. Joe, have you played this before?
I played it a lot when I was growing up, and I had a link cable.
Did you ever beat it?
I beat it plenty of times.
Oh, okay. Did you play the mini games or the micro games?
I did. I played a good few of them as I was growing up. I never like 100% the game, but I played a good bit of them.
So how much do you unlock? Like how many games do you get? Is it just one game and you have to unlock one game each time, or is it like a pack of games?
I want to say it was one game like per level.
Okay, so there's only 8 levels, so you can only unlock 8 games?
It's not a lot.
It's not a lot, because in WarioWare the games are like 4 seconds long.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still kind of a cool bonus, I guess. It's a cool idea, if nothing else.
A trophy, or
That's true. I don't mean to like. moving on, we also have the gold statue parts. If you collect all 8 of these, then your health goes up by 1/2 a heart. Um, and then the last one is red diamonds. So when you get to the end of the level, every level has a boss. And to access the boss, you have to get rid of the stone thingamajig blocking the entrance. And that takes 3 diamonds in the first world, 4 diamonds in the second world, I assume 5 and 6 in the third and fourth worlds. These diamonds, but there's 8 diamonds per level, so you don't need to collect all of them. And these diamonds are collected via like underground like platforming challenges. You'll see an area in the level that you can ground pound, and you'll fall into just this puzzly or platform challenging area. And honestly, I think those are my favorite parts of the game because they feel like a lot of thought was put into them. They feel like just refined small chunks of challenge. And honestly, it made me think like, WarioWare is just mini game after or micro game after micro game after micro game after micro game, just back to back to back. I almost want to see a Wario World style game, but instead of walking around in these big open levels, it was just like room to room of these just like tiny platforming and puzzle challenges. I just think that would be more engaging because I don't want to get ahead of myself, but these worlds are big, but exploring them's not that interesting. What do you guys think about like the exploration, Joe?
They're pretty linear because they are big, but it just kind of feels like you're on, like for the most part, you're on a fairly set path where you can branch off a little bit, but you are eventually going to end up on the same path going through the same parts of the level. There's not a lot of exploration you can do versus like maybe different levels, or you can go like up or down, or you can like branch off to one path and then come back to the main path.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you have talking about platformers, more classic platformers. You have Mario. You go like that across.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you jump over some gaps, jump on some enemies. Use a power flower or whatever it may be. Donkey Kong has a bit of a mixture. It's pretty linear, but you have a lot more vertical mobility, I think, in the Donkey Kong series than you do in Mario. Some levels are almost entirely vertical, but still, it's fairly much just end to end. And then Wario Land, let me throw that out there, has the kind of a mix of the two and kind of goes like a little bit further where you can go as linear as possible, but it encourages exploration because instead of crystals, you have to get pieces of like a puzzle, I guess. I don't really know what to call it, to progress to the next area. And this feels like the next step in that. And in the 2D setting, being able to go up, down, left, right, and go up platform after platform, way up in the area to find sometimes mysteries that you don't know are previously there, finding the CDs, whatnot. That's really cool. The areas were beautiful. The colors, the art design, everything was a lot of fun. The enemies were greatly varied, and there are different effects and abilities they gave Wario. Kind of again a counter to Mario. In Mario, if you want to be able to kill certain enemies, maybe you have to eat one of the toadstools to be able to jump on them. It'll make you grow a bit bigger. You can jump on enemies and kill them. In Wario Land 4, he gets stung by enemies, has an allergic reaction, and allows him to float away. So it's kind of like this, again, like a weird twist on Mario. Wario doesn't want these things to happen to him, but it gives him abilities, so it allows it to like help him progress in the area. This kind of throws all that away and keeps some of it, but I don't think it works in a 3D setting where these levels are fairly linear, but there's a lot of areas to explore. You kind of go back and wind up and down and around to get to that little mini challenge to get another crystal. Not all the crystals are required. I think these are great things, but the problem for me is that the in between is a slog. It's a beat 'em up primarily as far as gameplay outside of these little mini levels go, and it's not fun. A lot of the enemies that I've seen so far have just been reskinned from you have small guys who you can just punch and kill. You have medium-sized guys so you can knock out and then use the spin and knock out other bigger guys. You have Blastoise, whichever you want to call him, who shoots bombs out of his back, who's also reskinned a couple of times. And you have pterodactyls or birds. I don't know. There's not enough variability in the enemy types, and the actual combat itself is not fun. Where literally I just punch until I can pick someone up and spin them around, and that's pretty much the core of that part of the game, that gameplay. And I found myself just jumping over places, jumping over enemies, got a lot of it.
So it sounds like someone's not doing enough pile drivers.
For real.
It's like to me.
I do the pile drivers, but the animation takes so long, and I don't kill enough enemies with it. So I just do this most of the time because it knocks out a full room, you know.
Yeah, let's talk about the combat for a second. So it is very much, it's a 3D platformer, but it's also a beat 'em up. There's not a lot of skill involved. Don't expect platinum level combat. This is you have a punch attack, you have a dash attack, and then you have like a ground pound. And you just use that. Little enemies will just die whenever you hit them, and bigger enemies will like fall over, and then you can pick them up and do what the game calls mad moves, which I think are hilarious. You can do a mega toss where you just charge up and chunk the enemy as hard as you can. You do a pile driver, which is the best move in the game, where Wario jumps in the air with the enemy, spins vertically like 6 times for no reason, and then like smashes them into the ground. And then the last one has probably the worst name that I've ever heard in my life, the Wild Swing Ding, which is what Ryder was referring to earlier, the spin attack, which I think is really fun. You grab enemies and then you just like take the analog stick and twirl it really fast, and Wario will like do a seismic toss kind of thing and knock out other enemies in his path. Which, by the way, apparently you can like charge that up, and then once it's charged up and you're spinning, you can stop spinning the stick and just move around and not have to spin the stick anymore. Mm-hmm. You guys are nodding like it's obvious. I didn't know that as a child or for the first half of this chunk of the game, and so I was just like destroying my controller in the process of playing this.
One of the characters tell you that you can just like stop doing it once you stop flashing blue.
Or blue. That's another thing. There's one more collectible I forgot to mention. There's Spritelings. I think there's 5 in each level, and they're in little boxes, and they're the spirits of the forest or something like that, and they give Wario advice because there's nothing woodland creatures love more than a billionaire, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, you save them. They give you advice every time you break them out. I think that's pretty much all they do. You need it for completion. But going back to the combat, Joe, what do you think about the combat?
Well, I like beat 'em ups, but beat 'em ups are inherently repetitive, like by nature, because that's always going to be, you come across an enemy and you're going to do the same moves that you find to be the most effective. But I think it's stupid enough that I enjoy it, and especially Wario makes it more entertaining because every time you do one of these wacky moves or whatever, he has like a quip that he yells at people, where he's like, "Goodbye, so long," or "Get out of here," and stuff like that. I found it to be entertaining, but I also grew up with it, so I'm also really nostalgic to it. And then by the time I got to the point where I missed a collectible in one of the levels, and I just went back through it, and I ended up just charging through it by dashing. So it was really easy to skip through if you didn't want to fight the enemies, which is also something that beat 'em ups do by nature.
This game is really accessible, like surprisingly accessible for a game that's like this silly and strange. Like the platforming puzzle underground challenges, most of them are optional. Like you have to do a few of them, but if one's too hard or you can't figure out the puzzle, like you can just skip it and move on to the next one. You have that option. It's not just going to be a roadblock for you. And then if you get to the end of the level and you realize that you missed a collectible and you wanted to go back and get it, it doesn't make you just play the whole level over. You like finish level or quit and play the whole level over. There's some balloons you grab by the goal, and they'll take you back to the beginning. And you can use that to just sort of power through the level you've already been through, so you don't have to solve any of the puzzles again. You don't have to defeat any of the mini bosses.
And also the red crystals.
It feels like...
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say the red crystals are like the only things you have to collect in the levels. Like you don't have to collect the treasures to get the micro games. You don't have to collect the golden pieces to get extra health, even though it might come in handy.
I think it really respects like the casual player, and I think it also really respects the completionist because I don't know about you guys, but I went in and I was like, I'm just gonna play the level, collect what I see along the way, and now I'm like, I have to get the gold pieces and all of the red diamonds. I don't really care about the treasures because I don't have the Game Boy Advance Link cable, but I've gotten most of the treasures. Like I'll seek them out if I see them, but I'll also be able to live with myself. How casual or serious are you guys taking the completion approach, Ryder?
I'm not. I'm grabbing what I see. I'll do minor backtracking, like if I pass, a W tile, and I'm like, okay, that was there. I haven't seen the button yet, and if I go forward 30, 45 seconds and I find the button, I'll go. All right, I'll go back for it. But if I hit a button and I don't find the purple W within sight, I'm not going to hurt myself over it because I don't care enough. There's some collectibles we talked about before in the show. Sly Coopers are interesting enough for me because they allow me to get new moves I can use in combat. These don't do anything of use to me, other than give me extra health. But talking about accessibility, this game allows me to continue upon death. I just have to pay a few coins, and there's no shortage of coins.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've shelled out over 1,000 coins on deaths. I'm sure, just because I don't care. Like I'm not even trying to be careful when fighting against bosses or the endless waves of enemies, because I know that the biggest consequence is I'm going to be set back a few hundred coins. And you could say that's me being boring or not taking it seriously or having fun, but I really wanted to have fun coming into this game, but there just wasn't enough of a stake there for me to seriously care about that or like I said, the rest of the collectibles. Initially I was trying to get all of the collectibles, but once I got to the end of the first level, and which has been the shortest level I think so far, besides the boss fights, but I got to the end and it had been 35-40 minutes and I was missing one crystal. I was like, nah, it's not worth it. And so I just kept going, and it kind of set the precedent. And again, going back to other games where I do complete something like this, like Sly Cooper gave me new moves, and the levels were short enough and linear enough where I could run through within 3 minutes if I missed something. And I don't know, I'm enjoying the core of it, but just not enough to go back and try to search really hard for these things.
Yeah, not to reiterate our thoughts on Sly Cooper too much, but I'll agree that the rewards for collecting everything is except for maybe the micro games. I think those are really interesting, but the other rewards aren't as interesting as they are in Sly Cooper in Wario World. But we talked about the accessibility. It was so annoying in Sly Cooper. It's like you collected 99 out of 100 of the bottles, you get nothing. And then in Wario World, it's like, oh, you only collected 3 out of the 8 crystals. You still good job, congratulations. That's all we ask of you. And I think that's nice.
I mean, if you collect 7 out of the 8 gold pieces, you get nothing.
That's true. It's not entirely friendly. Yeah,
So,
I don't know.
The crystals are more like the
keys
that help you progress in Sly Cooper, not really like the collectible bottles.
That's a fair point. Let's talk about the levels themselves real quick. So our first world is called Excitement Central. I don't know who they paid to name everything in this game, but they were having the time of their life, I think. I say that. Level 1 has a pretty tame name. Level 1 is called Greenhorn Forest. Pretty simple, just sort of a left to right level. You encounter the first enemies in the game, which are small T-Rex things, slightly bigger T-Rex things, and pterodactyls. We talked about the combat. The small guys you just punch and they die. The big guys, they fall over and then you throw them and pile drive them into smaller guys, and then the pterodactyls you jump and then you punch them and then you pick them up and then you throw them into smaller guys. That's pretty much as they get. A bunch of coins fly out whenever you're fighting. You can pick up the coins by running into them, or you can inhale them by holding down L, and that's probably my second favorite thing in the game after the pile driver, because it very much was like oh, we really liked Luigi's Mansion and thought that collecting coins in that game was really fun. And I'm like, I agree. Every game should have a method of like quickly collecting coins and like drops that are far away.
I especially love that it's like controlled analog in a way, so that you can like slightly press the L button down and Wario will slightly open his mouth, or you can mash it all the way down and Wario's just drop to the floor. Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. I've just been mashing it like as hard as I can. That's really funny. And that's, again, Charles Martinet's. I surely it was Charles Martinet. I didn't double check, I guess.
I assume.
His voice acting in that game, like inhaling, is just hilarious. Excuse me. So we go through the level. You can get the collectibles if you want. You can fight the guys if you want. But each level also has a boss at the end of it. And the first boss is one of the Battletoads. His name was Green Fist. And he's pretty straightforward, just a big frog guy, and you punch him, and then he turns red, and when he's red, he's invincible, and then you run from him when that happens. Do you guys have any thoughts on Green Fist, the Battletoad?
I thought it was fun. But a lot of the bosses are, in a sense of like, punch them and then do what you want to deal massive amounts of damage, which usually ends up you being like throwing them, pile driving them, or spinning them around and then throwing them. And then it like
you do one of the mad moves.
Yeah, then it deals 1 damage to them. I mean, it's very simple boss. You just punch him, and you don't punch him when he's trying to punch.
Yeah, it's not puzzly. It's more like pattern recognition. At least in like the first part of the game, you're like, oh, he's attacking. I should just get out of the way, and then you come back, and then you attack him when he's not attacking you. It's kind of like Dark Souls, actually. Ryder, you think so?
It's like the Dark Souls of Mario games.
There's a lot of grotesque, terrifying creatures that you fight, kind of like Dark Souls. So yeah, Green Fist, pretty basic boss. We get to the second level, Greenhorn Ruins, similar aesthetic, but instead of being in a forest, there's also some crumbling pillars and whatnot around. Here we're introduced to the Triceratops enemy, who walk on 2 legs and have a club to hit you with, which is hilarious, frankly. And these guys, they basically have like 2 life bars. You like hit them a bunch, and they drop down on all 4s. They revert back to their primal selves, and then they also turn red and charge at you. And then you're also introduced to the crystal entity. Oh, Joe got mad when I started talking about the Triceratops. That's not good.
Don't talk about Triceratops like that.
I forgot about what happened to his father.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Anyway, we get to the crystal entity, which I can only describe as like a mini boss. Joe, tell us about the crystal entity.
I'm trying to remember. Oh, the little like arena boss guys.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's what their name was.
I didn't know it until I looked it up.
There are 2 different segments of arenas that can happen in the stage, and whenever you enter an arena, when the crystal entity is the one that you're fighting, it'll just like drop down from the sky, peg itself into the ground, and start shooting lasers at you, and spawning little swordsman guys and little guys that have wings on them. You attack the little swordsman guys or the wing guys, pick them up and use a mad move on the boss or on the enemy, and it'll deal damage to it. I'm pretty sure they always have 3 hit points. So you deal damage to it, it'll shoot more lasers at you, and you repeat 3 times until you can do a mad move on the crystal entity itself.
Classic example of the boss doing things that foretell its own demise. Like, if she would just... it feels effeminate to me. If she would stop spawning enemies, then she would be invincible and would rule the world. But no, she can't help herself. Yeah, so the first time I saw this boss, I'm like, oh, that's cool. There's like a mini boss. Oh, I get it. That's how you fight it. Pretty simple. Early game mini boss. Cool. And then it appears in the next level. And then it appears in the next level. And then it appears... I think I fought the thing 4 times across like 3 levels. And I don't understand why they keep putting that enemy in. I don't know. It got very frustrating for me. Ryder, do you secretly love this enemy?
No. The first time I fought against it, I'm sorry guys, I'm not trying to be pessimistic. Like I said, I
No,
was
speak your
excited,
truth.
but I'm gonna hit it with this game. So this enemy, this is on me, but the first time I fought it, I got the concept immediately. I'm like, okay, use little guys to beat up big guy. I got this. I can do it. And I did that, and I did it, and I kept fighting him, and fighting him, and fighting him, and fighting him, and I probably made like 1,500 coins just endlessly beating the crap out of this crystal entity thing. And then eventually, on accident, I walked up to it and hit B while it was, freaking out.
Um,
While spinning out the cuckoo birds, and I picked it up and was like, yeah. And then I realized, oh, I was supposed to do that like the whole time. So I didn't have to fight this thing for 15 minutes. So that's entirely on me, but I made way too much gold on that thing. That's also why I've had like no problem at all just mashing, yes, I want to spend however much gold to bring myself back to life.
funding your revivals.
I mean, I think I funded all my revivals just on that. I have like 6,500 coins left. I'm not even trying to collect them. But again, it's an issue that I mentioned earlier, though. There's not enough variability. I mean, some of the reskins are fun. I'm sure we'll talk about some of the others later. But it's the exact same enemy. And I'm trying really hard to think, and I don't think from the first world level 2 to the end of the second world, I don't think there's any new enemy types that are introduced.
Well, they did make that enemy
Well,
different. They added two more little guys in the second world.
Thank you.
They also gave her like a
variability.
slightly different laser attack.
Yeah, and so there's some variability in attacks, and so like I will give credit where credit is due. But largely, there's not much of a difference during in the first half of the game. I just don't feel like there's been enough of a change. And even though there are these little but mini levels in between where you get your crystals, there's so much time spent on the, moving in between and having to fight some of these enemies. Like I said, I made like 7,000 coins plus, something like that. At this point, I'm just kind of hopping over enemies and only fighting them when I'm like cornered and have to. And I don't know. I don't hate it, but it's just it's mind-numbing and not in a good way.
I think you're spending too long playing this game. You said you spent like 30, 45 minutes on the game, on the first level? Because I think I beat both the worlds in like an hour or an hour and a half.
I mean,
I definitely took close to what
like,
Ryder said.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
It took me like 2.5 hours total, I think, to beat everything. And a lot of it, again, this is an issue that I brought up earlier. I don't know if I was clear enough that I do not like this part. That the maps are fairly big. And you said earlier that they're linear. They're kind of linear, but at some points you can drop down or drop down off of a ledge, and it might put you back way far in the map.
Yeah.
And without me even intending to, and I understand there has to be some punishment. But if I miss a platforming portion and I'm punished by having to go all the way back through this level that I don't know very well, it's not fun to explore again because of these repetitive enemies and a combat system that is literally just. And my face is pretty much. I feel dead for a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never fun in platformers to be like set back a bunch because you missed one jump. Similarly, if you fall off a ledge and there's nothing below you, you fall into I forget what they call it, like Urathar's pit or something, some nonsense word like that. And there's just a bunch of ghost dinosaurs chasing you, and you have to run around and break blocks until you find a spring that you can jump on to launch you out of there.
Mm-hmm.
That's not fun. They really
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
They do change it up.
I think there's I mean, like it's a different layer, but
But it's the same
slightly
thing.
different. It's like it's the same aesthetics. It's just a slightly different layout, and they like move where the spring is.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's not terrible. It just feels like tedious. You're like, oh man, I missed the jump, and instead of just respawning at the top, you're like, time to run around and punch boxes until I'm allowed to return back to the game I was trying to play. I
Mhm.
don't know. That's how I feel about it. Joe, do you have a more positive opinion?
Not really. I mean, I think it's cool that they did something different other than just like getting Lakitu to pull you back onto the track. But I don't know if this
Yeah.
is the way to go about it.
At least it's not an instant death. There's nothing worse in pretty much any game than an insta death,
Mhm.
like regardless of the context. Um, my wife is playing through, or you guys, Megan is playing through Yoshi's Island for the first time, and she's playing on the Switch, so there's like a rewind feature, and she's pretty good about like playing through the level like the right way. I use that because there's no right way to play video games. She can rewind every 5 seconds to be fine, but every once in a while she'll like fall in a pit or like touch an insta kill spike, and then she'll like rewind, and she's like, "Is it okay that I'm doing that? I don't want to do the whole level." And I'm like, "Yes, that's terrible. That's antiquated game design to make
Yeah.
the game harder." Anyway, I'm glad that they don't do that. But speaking of platforming in general, how do we feel about how do we feel about the platforming? Like, how does it feel? Right?
Bad.
Joe?
Uh, I don't know. I'm okay with it. It's not the best, but it's a little bit floaty, but it's also kind of fast, and I enjoy at least being fast.
I
So
think the.
go ahead. Go ahead. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I was just saying. I think the movement speed is like fine. I kind of wish you had an option, like several buttons on the controller that aren't being used. I kind of wish one of them was like a dash. I mean, you have like your short burst dash, but I mean like a run versus walk speed rather than
Mhm.
just like a short like shoot across the screen. That might be nice. The walking speed's okay. The thing that bothers me is the jumping. Gravity is very heavy, so you jump and then you like fall down really
Yeah.
fast. And it's a Wario game. It's not a Mario game, but Mario games and most 3D platformers, because most 3D platformers are based on Mario, have like floatier jumps so that you have a little more control while you're in the air. And Wario just kind of like sinks really fast once he reaches the apex
Mhm.
of his jump, and that can make it hard to land where you're trying to land if you don't have like the exact right angle. Ryder, what were you gonna say?
Pretty much, I was going to go into that. So this game came out in 2005. Um, I think
2003,
was it three? Okay. Mario 64 is what, 97,
96.
96.
96? Okay. So this game, it's platforming, controls like uh, the early Crash Bandicoot games. And while I like those games, I acknowledge that the platforming is more of a product of its time. Um, there's a lot of things required in that game that don't really feel great now. Just harsher punishments than in this game. So, when you're jumping, it's much more precise. If you have a circle and you need to land on it, you need to land like flat on it. Because if you hit the edge, you're going to kind of go off. There's like a save mechanic, like a grip, but it does not work. It barely ever works unless you're like facing the edge as you're falling off.
Mhm.
Um, Mario 64, I'm pretty. I've read this and watched like videos on it, YouTuber documentaries about the way the platform was created, and there's a sloppiness that's allowed to it. That was part of like the development of the gameplay itself. I'm pretty sure, as far as like the physics and the way that he responds to landing. It You would think in a 3D space it should be more precise than in a 2D space, but it's the complete opposite. In a 2D game, 2D platformer, you should be as precise as possible. Where if someone lands on the edge of something, they shouldn't really fall off of it as long as their character is balanced like precariously on the edge of it. You allow for definitive physics that are going to kill you or not kill you because you're in a 2D space. But in a 3D space, it's much more punishing to say you have to land exactly on this like pinpoint right here. The Mario 64 allows you to kind of be a little bit more clumsy, allows you to kind of grab onto ledges and pull yourself back up a little bit easier. There's other games made by like Insomniac, I believe, is who made the Spyro games. I might be wrong about that. As Naughty Dog made the Crash games. These games are all made around the same time. Crash went one way with it, and platformers creators kind of realized this doesn't really work in a 3D space. So something like Spyro that came a little bit later allows you to kind of save yourself on falls and is a little bit floatier, like you mentioned. All Mario games pretty much are a bit floatier, and you have a chance to save yourself or catch yourself on an edge. You don't have to hit precisely on the platform. In these mini levels, there's a lot of points. Camera control is pretty much non-existent. You can kind of rotate the camera in like 90 degrees or like 45-degree angles, but you can't control it while you're really moving. And there's some points where the most frustrating for me is when a block is rotating. And like I said, there's not really a good grab mechanic to keep yourself from falling off of it. And there's one mini level in particular that drove me crazy because I was landing precisely on the block, but it was starting to turn, and I couldn't jump to like save myself, and I was just fall. Or I'd jump and hit this angle and just slide straight off. I know I just talked for a long time. All that to say, I do not like this platforming. Again, I wanted to like it, and I understand that Wario needs to feel different, but again, 2D Wario did a great job of taking what made Mario cool and putting a twist on it. This so far to me has not really impressed me. It's just frustrated me. That's my spiel. You guys can say your spiel or tell me that I'm wrong or that it is better or whatever. But I am frustrated with this game, and I don't want to be, because I do like Wario and I love the concept of it.
Yeah, the platforming's not great. Like it just isn't. I can't defend it as good platforming. I will say that I haven't had as much issue with like grabbing on ledges as you have. There's like one time in like the last level of this section where there's a ledge that I felt like I should be able to grab that I couldn't, because that's not how they designed the level, and they didn't want me to skip like a larger portion of it by just pulling myself up there. I will say that I kind of wish he had more movement options. Because he can jump, he can dash. If you dash and do a jump, you basically do kind of like a spinny long jump kind of thing, which is situationally useful, I guess. I think the one thing that would really like open up the platforming in this game is if he had wall step, kind of like in Sekiro. If you run up to a wall and you jump, if you're like pressed against it, you can press the jump button again, and it'll sort of kick off the wall and get a little extra height. So not really like a double jump that you can do in midair, but just something to give you a little extra height to reach a ledge or a platform that you just are almost at. I think that would add a lot to the movement options. Yeah, it's fine. It definitely, in my opinion, works better as a beat 'em up than it does as a platformer. As far as the large scale of the game. That being said, the small platforming puzzle sections are still my favorite part, because they feel well thought out rather than just like random roaming and then spawning a bunch of enemies in front of you. If Joe doesn't have anything else to say about that, then we're going to move on to the boss of level 2.
We're tearing apart his favorite childhood game, so
yeah, this is actually Joe's favorite. You can't see it, but he's wearing like WarioWare slacks or Wario World slacks right now. Just with Wario's face all over them.
That's it. I wouldn't say it's my favorite.
It's kind of a gaudy combination, but
I played it a lot because I didn't have a lot of GameCube games.
Fair enough. We get to the end of level 2, and we get to the boss, and it's the Sandworm, who my headcanon is the monster that eats you if you fall into the sand pit in Dry Desert in Mario Kart Double Dash.
I thought you were going to say
that's my headcanon.
Boba Fett.
No, that was a Sarlacc, Joe. Come on, man.
This is in the prequels they evolved.
Yeah, I don't have any strong feelings about this boss. It was more interesting than the first one, because he would kind of disappear and reappear, shoot stuff at you. Ryder, you're nodding. Was there anything positive about this boss in your mind?
It was better than the first boss. No, I didn't hate this. It was almost the exact same concept, but on quicksand. Not really quicksand as much as it was you're on a slope that was intentionally pulling you down, not just. I guess you were sliding down into the Sarlacc. It was kind
it
of
would speed
fun.
up, and you'd have to use like your dash ability to like get out of there. I thought that was neat. It made you use your movement options and not just punch.
There was a bit more variability, and like getting chased at some points, I was actually like, ugh. Like the first fight, I never really had to worry about taking any damage. This fight, I think I actually died. I think it was my first real death was on this fight because of his chop. I like that he was like Scyther. If Scyther was a hibachi chef.
It legitimately scared me the first time because I was just like punch, and then I heard like the invincibility noise, and I was just mashing, so I kept punching, and then all of a sudden he pulled out like 2 Grim Reaper scythes for hands, and I legitimately was like, oh, scary. Joe?
I enjoyed this boss. It's more complex than the first boss in that it doesn't just have like you can hit me phase and now I'm attacking phase, where it actually has like different moves and it moves around and you have to chase it and you have to like avoid different attacks where he's spinning around throwing out spike balls or doing his little Scyther attack. I think it's a lot more varied, but I guess the first boss is supposed to be really easy because it's the first boss of the first level. So
kind of a tutorial kind of thing. Yep. We beat that boss, and that brings us to the end of World 1. We get to the big boss level. The first big boss is Dino Mighty, who is a giant alligator wearing a bikini. That's honestly the best I can do to describe it. I told you they were terrifying enemies in this game. Visually disturbing, and I gotta say that this was probably my least favorite boss in this section because it was basically the brawler equivalent to a bullet sponge, which basically just means it's an enemy that has just way too much health, and the reason that they're hard to beat is because you just have to hit them a whole bunch of times and do the same thing over and over again. It didn't feel. Oh, okay. Apparently, I did this level completely wrong, and they're going to tell me why I did it wrong. They're going to tell me why I did it wrong. It's okay. It's okay to make mistakes, guys. This boss fight probably took me like 15 minutes of just like punching, dodging the kicks and jumps, and then punching. So I'm guessing that you're supposed to grab on to the spongy ball bits and do something with those. Why don't you enlighten me about that?
I'll let you take it, Joseph.
It must have good game design because there's multiple ways to defeat the boss. If you grab onto the spongy thing on the back of the dinosaur's tail, it will like look over around for you and its tail will lean up over its head and you just jump off and ground pound and it immediately stuns the boss. And then you can pick it up and throw it in a pile drive or spin it around or whatever. And there's also another way you can do that too. Whenever it does its tongue attack, it has a sponge ball on the edge of its tongue too. You can grab onto that, and then as it like pulls back, you can jump off and ground pound its head again.
Gotcha. I grabbed onto the tail one time, and I guess I got it during the middle of like a different animation because it just didn't do anything different. And I don't know if I would have thought to ground pound while I was up there because honestly, I kind of forget I have that move except for to get to like the secret areas. And then the tongue thing, I tried to jump on that once, and I missed, and then I couldn't get it to like do it again when prompted, so I just kept punching it. That was the first time I died. So
I want to say you can also pick up the like the stone pillars on the side and attack the boss with that too, and that might stun it. But I didn't try that. I just know they're there.
That's cool. Well, do better than me is the lesson that we learned here. Terrifying boss either way.
This was my favorite.
Go ahead. Yeah.
This is my favorite boss, I think. Period in this game. I like the actual design of it. It was goofy, over the top. Again, this is my only point of reference really, besides the third game, which I didn't play too much. But Wario Land 4's bosses were like 2D, terrifying, primal god things. I don't know. And then this was just Big Mama alligator with a bikini on, and I was like, okay, I can do this. But I liked it. It was fun. I agree with Joseph. There's variability in this boss fight. This boss fight had more premise or more promise to me than like any other part of this game. And the option to punch them and then throw her was presented at first because I didn't see the ball. I was just staying on her front, just punching because it looked like she had like an X or something like on her belly. So I was like, all right, so this is what I have to hit. And I took like one of her health bars or little skulls away. And then I saw the ball in the back of her tail and was like, okay, I'm going to use this and see if I can maybe ground pound her head. And that worked. I never even saw the tail. Her tongue. I saw her shoot her tongue out like once or twice, but never even noticed the ball on the end. I enjoyed this. I was going to say, though, we never really talked about this, but it seems like a pretty minor thing, but I really like the idea of these, we're calling them sponge balls, I guess. You can climb onto them and kind of rotate around them. So instead of, this is a 3D platformer, and so when you jump on them, it allows you to kind of rotate around in 300-ish degrees and to allow you to jump different directions. So far, I'm going to be honest, I really like this idea, but I haven't seen enough of it actually used to make a difference, because if I need to jump over here and I'm on this one right here, I can be on this side and still jump and make it, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
I don't know if this is really going to come in at some point. It doesn't really matter which direction I'm facing. In some of the mini games, though, I know there was one where you had to climb on one of those balls and it was floating through, like, not an obstacle course, but there were a couple of spikes, and you had to like kind of position yourself perfectly to not be hit by the spikes. And so I guess that's why it's in there, is really for more the platforming sections. So I did like that, and that was actually something that I can say positive about this game.
I think those are cool as well. It's a little more interesting than just grabbing like a pole and climbing straight up. It's a little wonky sometimes, and I think it's funny that the game kind of warns you of that, because if you save the Spriteling like right before you encounter the first one, they're like, hey, I think they're called glue balls. It's like, hey, here's how these like glue balls work. It's a little tricky, so don't get frustrated. Just give yourself some time. You can do it. Like, he literally has dialogue that's basically telling you that it's hard to do. I wouldn't say it's hard, but it's a little wonky sometimes, and I thought that was humorous.
We did a bad job making this game, but we're gonna make it seem like it's you who needs more practice.
Well, it's like games where the main character acknowledges like how ridiculous whatever's about to happen is. Like, oh my god, like when you're like in a gunfight, like Uncharted or something, and it's been going on for like 10 minutes, and the only way for it to be interesting is if more guys show up, and so they're like, Nathan's like, oh man, where do these guys keep coming from? And it's like, you're just acknowledging that there's too many guys. Like, if you're aware of that, then like fix it and just stop putting as many guys. That's all you have to do. I don't know. It's kind of funny to me. We get to move on to World 2?
I think so.
Okay. World 2 is called Spooktastic World. I'm sorry, it's just funny to me. It's just such a dumb name. It's just such a dumb game, but it's really funny.
I'm glad you wrote down
level
the
1
names
is
of the
called.
levels.
Oh yeah, they're hilarious. Level 1 is called Horror Manor. This is probably the aesthetic that I enjoyed the most. I like the spooky haunted house levels in like cartoony games. Like, I love Luigi's Mansion and anything with that vibe. We meet some new enemies in this game. I say new with an asterisk, because they're basically the dry bones versions of all the enemies we've already fought. It's all the same dinosaurs, but now they're skeletons.
Yeah, they're all just reskinned.
So yeah, they're just rescanned. And Ryder, you mentioned that earlier. That's something that's going to continue happening as we continue through the game.
There are a couple of new enemies in this level.
The only one that I know of is the Big Bone Fist, which might be the second funniest thing that I've read in this game.
Like,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's like two new door enemies, the hand and the door knocker thing, and there's also the little sharks.
I forgot about the sharks. I kind of like the sharks because literally just sharks, but instead of fins on top, they just have knives.
Yeah.
And I think that's hilarious. I think that's good enemy design. Like Joe mentioned, there's two bosses that are basically doors. One of them's a big bone fist, which is just a skeletal hand out of a door, and you have to dodge its attacks until it does like a hand slam, and then you like ground pound it in the back of its hand. You do that like I think 3 times, and it dies. Moving on, and then there's one that's like a lion's head knocker, and it shoots energy blasts out of its mouth. I didn't realize that after you punch it enough times, it turns invisible, and instead of just shooting more like little orbs at you, it like fires a giant laser.
There's 2
And
of
so
them.
I would just like, yeah, I would just stand there and like take the laser, and then just like keep punching, and then I died, and I was like, oh,
I know
maybe
that
there's
happens
more to this than I thought.
on the second door knocker. There's a silver one and a gold one. I know the silver one shoots the giant laser beam, and the gold one I don't
Oh,
know if it does.
You're so observant, Joe.
I played this game a
But
lot.
there's only
Like
one
this
of them.
level?
It was fine. What are you gonna say, Ryder?
I would say that there's only like one silver one because I remember noticing it as well. I think I died twice to it because of the charging my laser thing. Because I just wasn't going to stop. I just I kept punching it,
I did the same
and
thing.
it was like, here's 200 coins, take it from you, and take it, and then I died again and take it.
Mhm. I don't know if we ever noticed it, but not garlic. Wario's health is garlic, and there are guys you can like punch to pay money and get a head of garlic to restore like 1 piece of health. But if you, I mean, really dying is more cost effective than just refilling on health, because the price of the health goes up every time you hit it, and it starts at like 40 already, but it's only like 200 coins to restore to like come back from death.
It's an interesting like merchant mechanic because I believe the base price on like level 1 is like 20 gold for a piece of garlic, and then I think every level it gets more expensive, and then every time you buy it, it also gets more expensive. So the more you rely on it, the more you're spending. Realistically, unless you're just like trying to restore 1 heart so you can have like full health when you go into like a boss battle, it probably is more cost effective to just heal yourself or just like revive yourself when you die.
And you respawn exactly where you were.
Yeah, you lose no progress. You don't have to like start the boss fight over or start the platforming section over. It's very strange. And then like the platforming. No, you're good. I was just gonna say, and then like the platforming sections, like underground, when there's like bottomless pits there, instead of going to the layer where you have to find your way out, you just fall and then respawn at the beginning of the like challenge section, and you don't lose any health or anything, and that's really nice. What were you gonna say, Ryder?
No, I was going to say that I guess if you want to make the game harder, you could say no, I don't want to continue, which I'm assuming will just reset you completely. I don't know, I haven't done it. But at that point, you have a justification for buying the garlic, but otherwise, I don't do it because a lot of times you'll find a piece here or there, and if I do die, again, it's not the end of the world. I just pay for it. This is something we didn't talk about earlier, but I thought about it and just remembered. As far as these mini levels, I don't know if this was done before in a Mario game, but to me, they feel like the Mario Odyssey, like kind of like one-off levels. I really like that. And
like through the doors.
You have to ground pound the doors or whatever, and then you have your little mini levels where you get the crystals. It reminds me of getting moons in Super Mario Odyssey, where sometimes it'll teleport you to like this room where you have to complete a puzzle or platforming section. And I don't know if that was done, like I said, in a different Mario game or maybe other platformers. But
it reminded me of the. I was gonna say, this reminded me of the Mario Sunshine like floodless levels, where they take away flood. And it's just pure like platforming, get to the end of the section, and the music's similar. Not like the arrangements, but there's a lot of like GameCube synth Barry saxophone happening. That just reminds me of Mario's Sunshine soundtrack. Anyway, sorry to get off.
Which came first, Sunshine or this?
Sunshine was like 2001 or 2002.
Okay,
it was like just after the launch. Yeah.
I was wondering what kind of jump started. Like if this was, because it would be funny to me if a completely different team, not associated with like your main team, was like, yeah, we're going to create this, and then the main team was like, that's a good idea. Let's keep that in mind for when we make, games in the future. Because I'll be honest, my like Mario repertoire isn't great as far as the 2D platformers. I played a lot of those. I played, as far as 3D, I think 64 and Mario Odyssey, the only games I played through beat. So, but I just don't know about a lot of this. So I don't know how much of it's appeared in other games or what came first or what didn't.
That's pretty much it as far as like I can tell.
There were like a couple levels in Sunshine where you would be in like a floating void in the middle of nowhere, and you still have FLUDD, and you just like do like one long slide and get a shine sprite or something like that.
Oh yeah.
I think there were only like 2, maybe 3 of those, maybe 4. I don't know.
Hey, I'm sorry. What was your point? We went all around the world talking about Mario Sunshine.
I was just talking about like these like little mini levels, like how you have to get the crystal to progress. The crystals is what I was referring to. Is kind of like they reminded me of the moons, and the individual levels having to get them. How it's separate from like this larger level. It's kind of how it felt like Super Mario Odyssey to me. That's just like my frame of reference. You have New Donk City, and then you can go into like the sewers, and you go into the sewer, and then you have a separate mini level there where you can have like a platforming section, and you get a crystal. In the case of Super Mario Odyssey, you get a moon, which would allow you to progress to the next level, the next world, whatever it may be.
Gotcha. Well, now may I move on to level 2? Oh wait, no, we gotta do the boss for level 1. Brawl Doll. Honestly, the scariest thing in this game. I don't know. I think like weird porcelain dolls of children are terrifying, and I don't understand why they continue to plague my existence. But this one's here. It's like a weird like Cupid kind of thing that like flies around, and it flies around. It punches you with its wings. I don't know if it's technically punching if you do it with wings, but I don't know the other word for that. Flap you. Okay. Yeah, I don't really remember much about this boss. It was kind of just dodge its attacks, punch them, and then once you did enough damage, it would like swoop away and do like a big attack that you had to dodge, and then come in closer for you to punch it again. It felt a lot more like a Green Fist than felt a lot like more simple like Green Fist was than having any kind of strategy to it. It just felt like punch and dodge phases, and that was it.
Yeah, that's essentially it. It's just the fact that it's a baby doll is the reason that I love it and hate it so much. Because I also hate baby dolls. I just think it's actually horrifying. But I
strictly hate it.
Yeah. I had a little bit more of a harder time with this boss for some reason. Maybe I was just getting hit by more of its flaps than I was the other bosses. So I guess it is kind of like the first boss of World 1, but just a little bit harder.
Yeah,
I was initially like, "Oh, this is creepy," and then I'd honestly forgotten about it after it happened. It just kind of in and out. There was nothing memorable about it other than the fact that it's kind of terrifying. I don't remember much about like I said, the fight itself. So I guess I just punched it until it died, and then kept going.
Yeah, fair enough.
I initially thought when you talked about the baby doll, I was like, "Yeah, I remember that," and then I was like, "No, that's the boss in the next world." So, but I remember it. I like that one better. This one, like I said, it was just kind of like, again, I just did not remember anything about it until you mentioned that it was really creepy, and I started thinking about it. And the porcelain doll was like, oh yeah, that thing.
We beat Brawl Doll, and we get to level 2 called Wonky Circus. Apparently, the circus is owned by Wario, based on all the posters stuck everywhere that say Wario Circus, which leads me to believe Does Wario own everything that we're playing through? Like, is this his estate that we're exploring? Is that what we're to believe? You know what I mean?
I was wondering if this is like, because I saw that too, and I was thinking about it, getting into the lore of this game. I was wondering if that was like a creation of like, this is like a creepy dream world that the crystal has created, and this is Wario Circus, and Wario is on display for the audience. Is more what I was thinking, because the rest of this, I'm assuming, has been created as well, and maybe parts of it were taken from his actual collection, and then the crystal kind of based, the environments around whatever he picked up. Maybe the dinosaurs were originally fossils that he found, and they're in the second level in the first world. There's ruins, so maybe he took something from the ruins in Wario Land 4, and then he turned that into, the Mayan Aztecish ruins.
You might be
Welcome
thinking
to
about it too hard.
Backlog Crew, where we have the deepest Wario World lore for you guys at home. No, that's cool. I like that better than just, yeah, he owns a circus and a forest and also a haunted mansion. Yeah, why not? I think that's cooler.
And, on the subject of lore about this
Yeah.
game, if you have ever been watching a lot of like YouTube videos about Wario and they bring up a picture where it has like a front-facing picture of Wario and half of him is like his intestines and everything, comes from the instruction manual of this game,
Oh yeah,
where they
it like shows his anatomy.
yeah, and they show how like disgusting he is on the inside.
But they also show that he has like a very small brain.
Yeah.
Which is just rude.
Yeah.
While we're talking about weird nonsense, have you guys paused the game for more than like 2 seconds? Obviously doesn't know what we're talking about. Ryder, I'm going to give you a challenge. I want you to pause the game and then sit there
I've
for
done it.
30 seconds and not mute anything.
I'm shaking my head because I've never hated a game during a pause screen as much as I hate this game. I'm trying to think. I was trying hard earlier to think because I wanted to talk about just the music in general. Because when I started this game, I was like, okay, I like some of this music. It doesn't work as well again as Wario Land 4. Start to finish, that music is phenomenal. And you get like a taste of like Wario's taste in music because it plays some like funky music that he's listening to like on his car ride and stuff. And so like in the overworld, you get like a bit of that. Some, you hear some like 808s and like drum beats and stuff, along with some like other music that sounds like something he might listen to. And then the original like jungle, the very very first level in the game, there's some funky music, I guess, kind of going on, and I'm like, okay, I kind of like this. And then everything after that, I was like, okay, I'm kind of indifferent to. But the pause screen is it's anxiety inducing, it's rage inducing. I would have to go to like the bathroom for like 5 minutes, and I could just hear from the bathroom and the.
I kind of like the backing beat.
I hate it. I hate every bit of it. This game, you made it worse for me by reminding me about this. I'm sorry, I'll pull the mic away from my face now.
Yeah, it's really annoying. It's like funny. You're like, oh, haha. And then it like actually starts to make you mad if you actually need to pause it for any reason.
Mm-hmm.
I learned this for myself, but I'm pretty sure I saw on like Gaming or something. If you let that run for just an incredibly long time, longer than anyone ever would, eventually he'll stop saying like yeah, 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 and then he'll just go, sorry. And then it'll just be the backing beat. And I think this is a really stupid Easter egg, and it's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Also, is the wonky circus. Enemies in this game, you have the small dinosaur, but instead of a dinosaur, it's a clown. Then you have the bigger dinosaur, but instead of a dinosaur, it's a bigger clown. And then you have the pterodactyls, but instead of a dinosaur, it's a pigeon, or a dove or whatever.
It's a chicken.
And then you have the triceratops, but instead of a dinosaur, it's an alligator in a bib with a rattle or whatever. It's the exact same enemies with a different skin. The different skin does add to the atmosphere. I'm glad they didn't just like reskin the dinosaurs again. And by that I mean just like a different coat of paint, but they're still dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
But effectively, these are the exact same enemies, with the exception of, I don't know the official name of it, but it's like a caged beast. It's like a cage that's sitting there on the ground, and if you like jump on it, it like eyes open up and like
Caged
Wile E.
lion.
Coyote's inside. Huh?
Caged lion or something.
What do you say? Yeah, and it's really cool because I don't know, it just pops legs out of the bottom and starts trying to beat you up. that enemy. And then we also see the electric clown fence, which is just an electric fence with targets on it that you have to throw things at to destroy the targets. Did you guys have any trouble with that? I was kind of worried that would be really hard to do because the aiming is not nice. Ryder, you had trouble with it?
I wouldn't say trouble. I had frustration because it didn't take long. It was just tedious because there was, as far as I could tell, there's no pattern. And if there was, the pattern was so long that I just couldn't memorize where these moving targets were going to go. And so most of the time, it was just me waiting and then would just chunk it. And that was like the first one, I think, where I would just wait and try to chunk it and get it perfectly on. The second one, I was just, at that point, near the end of our playthrough section, and I was just frustrated and would just grab and chunk. And I'm sure that I was taking longer doing that. But during this process, which I think it's important to mention, you're also getting chased by other enemies. And it varied. At some points, I'd only have one enemy just kind of following me in a circle. At one point, I had like 3 or 4. And it's very hard to accurately aim and throw when this thing is moving everywhere. And then there's the added layer of having to worry about other enemies chasing you. And so it wasn't the end of the world, but like I said, by the time I was done with it, I was just pretty much done, period, with this game. I was just like, I'm ready to be done for the day.
This was something that I remembered from when I was a kid, and I remember dreading it because I hated sitting there and chunking it, having the target get smaller, moving around faster. But when I freed the first Sprite, whatever they're called.
Spriteling? Question mark?
Whenever I freed that one in front of it, it was like, if you hit the target harder, it'll go away sooner. So I just, when the target was big and slow, I just charged up all the way, chunked it at the target, and then it just got destroyed immediately. So I didn't even remember that.
You have to hit it more than once if you don't do a fully charged throw?
Mm-hmm. The target gets smaller faster.
That's
Why would you do
I don't
that?
even remember reading that. So I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I saved him.
You're a bad person.
But I think I stopped caring about what they're saying because most of what they're saying were things that, like, so this is not an example of bad game design necessarily, but in the very first world, I wasn't being taught things fast enough, so I was just having to learn them myself, whether it be the ground pound or like the spin and everything else like that. I just started picking up on it before I was actually meeting the Spritelings, and by the time I reached like the end, I was getting things that I had learned within the first like 2 or 3 minutes. And so a lot of this I've just been skimming really quickly. Mm-hmm. And so I remember reading that and just saying, throw to hit the target. All right, got it. And just let them go. Which again, that's on me for not reading that.
That was also probably the first time I ever read it in the many times I played this game.
Well, it makes it a lot harder if you don't, because you have to hit it each one 3 times, and they get to where they're doing like not quite that fast, but they're moving like
they're
this.
Pretty fast and hard to hit.
Yeah, I had the problem where there are too many enemies around, because there's one in particular where they would just respawn enemies endlessly, so that you would have enemies to throw, but they would respawn so quickly that you wouldn't be able to like line up your shot before more were attacking you. That's only like one time, and I don't know. I did read that, and so I never even tried to just like gently toss them. I made sure I did like the max mega charge toss, and I also thought you had to hit both of the targets at the same time that are moving.
Oh, no.
So I only ever had to throw like one enemy. Like I missed one time, but every other time I just like chunked it and just lined it up. And I thought it was very forgiving, but maybe I just got lucky, or maybe I'm just really talented. I don't know. It's one of those two things probably. But yeah, the clown level I think was probably the surface level I think was the most interesting so far. Like I said, I preferred the aesthetic of the horror manor. But there's a section. This one has a lot of verticality to it, which, like Ryder mentioned earlier, means you can mess up and fall and have to redo a lot of stuff, which is obnoxious. Mm-hmm. But also means that there's some interesting platforming. There's a section where you have to, like, Crash Bandicoot style, run away from something that's, like, charging behind you, and escape to a safe position. I think there's also
the elephants.
Oh yeah, the elephants guy with the little
clown on
I don't
him.
know little guy riding him, and there's also little snakes with little guys riding them, and those were fine, I guess. I don't know. I don't have any strong opinions on those. Do you guys?
There's not a lot to them.
I
go ahead.
I got to where the elephants. So okay, I got what I asked for, I guess, as far as variability, because there's some new enemies added in this world. But the elephant, I don't think you ever have to fight them. There's one section where I remember being cornered with two of them, but I just jumped on like a ladder and just climbed away, so I didn't have to fight them. The snakes, there's two in the level, they're blocking my way. But what I did was I just grabbed one of the medium-sized enemies and just charged and chunked, and it knocked the snake, unconscious, or gave him cuckoo birds. And I picked him, charged, and then chunked him at the snake right beside him. So I don't know.
I think the most.
So part of. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, I think the most interesting part about both of these enemies is that the little guy falls off of them after you kill them, and you can pick up the little guy. Mm-hmm. So you have two things to pick up after you stun them.
If you don't pick him up, he just runs away. He just scampers away and disappears into the background, which is cute. Yeah, there's also, we didn't talk about this, like a fight arena kind of thing where you basically end up in a circle and you see a timer pop up at the top of the screen and you just fight waves of enemies until time runs out. You pick up coins as you fight enemies, and then at the end you get a treasure chest filled with money. This was cool the first time, but it just, I'm at the point now where I have plenty of money and it just feels like it's slowing me down. It's like, stay in one place and fight for 60 seconds. We know that you've been running past all the combat encounters that are optional, so we're going to make this happen. Ryder, you feel the same way?
Yeah, so here's another thing. Money might have a bigger use later, but right now use it to buy garlic or use it to revive yourself. And maybe if I was a kid and I was just really bad at this, maybe, but I think as a child, I honestly probably would have been better at this game than I am right now. There's some games that I think I'm better at now than I would have been back then, but this game in particular, I think I would have been better at it when I was a child. So I don't think I would have been spending a lot of my money. I hate to keep referencing it, but I thought there was going to be something like this, and like Wario Land 4, you use the currency to play mini games, and the mini games are extremely fun, and you'd use those. You get currency from those mini games that allows you to buy weapons essentially that damages the boss before you go in, and that's really cool because it's completely optional. You can fight the boss without doing any of that. But the minigames are fun in their own right, and they allow you to buy a cannon that blows off half of the boss's health. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
In this, assuming we are halfway through the game, at this point, there's nothing else to do with this money. And I just have a lot of it, and it's almost more worthwhile to just avoid the enemies when these encounters start than it is to fight them and just let the time run out. Because the very first time I did one of these fights, I was like, all right, cool. And doing the spinning attack that I was telling you guys about, it's so powerful because I just cleared the floor 40 seconds in. I was completely done with the first loop, and they just started the same enemies over again. So apparently there's not even, the waves don't even get harder indefinitely. So, which I kind of understand that they could only plan so far ahead, but you'd think that maybe they would have some type of, I don't know, 15 waves, 20 waves, something that would be almost impossible within the time span,
I think it's reasonable to expect them to plan ahead for more than 60 seconds of combat. I think that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah. I got to the point where I was just as soon as I see the timer come up, I'm just going to be here for 60 seconds.
Time to look at my phone and pay the bills when I die. No. Yeah, those pop up every once in a while. They're not terribly intrusive. It's not as annoying in my mind as when the crystal entity pops up. Because again, I think, I could be wrong, I didn't double check. I think it pops up twice in the circus level. I'm just not about that.
Yeah.
Also, in the circus level, there's a part where you ground pound through the floor and you end up in a different part of the level, that's cool. But there was a treasure chest that I didn't get, so I had to do the whole level again, like grab the balloons at the end. And again, very easy. I didn't have to do any of the fights again because it just let me like redo the level without actually having to like exit and enter again.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a little annoying that it didn't let me backtrack where I was before. Because that's like the only instance that has been the case.
I think it's fine again
Um,
if the levels are shorter. But I mean, even then,
yeah.
I know that you might not have had to do the fights again, but you still have to like weave your way in and out. And so much of this level, so much of this game just looks similar to previous areas, except for like the very first level that I feel like I'd have a hard time. Like I have to try and remember. Like there's some parts where it's clearly obvious. Like okay, I can't go left, so I have to go right.
Mhm.
But I did that. I ground pounded through that, and I was really worried because I was like, I don't think I've seen any of these. Um, I missed the actual gate for one of the mini levels, and I was like, oh god, I really don't want to get to the end of this level and then have to go back because I just missed so many mini levels and have to explore every nook and cranny I just didn't find before. It didn't make me do that, thankfully. But I don't know. That's kind of what I was referencing earlier because you can also just fall off like a ledge and like
Mhm.
not even realize. Like sometimes I thought like, okay, I'm gonna fall to my death and fall off here, and I got like knocked off or I slipped or something and fell, and then it sent me back way, 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 way back, and I'd have to go and just zigzag all the way back up the platforming, which I don't particularly care for in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's definitely some problematic aspects to the level design. But we get to the end of this level and we get to the clown around boss fight. This was my second favorite boss in this section of the game. Um, Basically, it's a creepy clown doll that's on top of a giant, like, I don't know, circus beach ball thing. And he's slowly traveling like between two platforms that you can't jump between. But the ball has little uh, glue sponge balls attached to it so that you can ride back and forth. If you miss the ride, he's gonna shoot his circus ball back at you, and it's gonna explode. You got to get to a safe place if that happens. But if you do manage to hang on to one of the glue balls and hit your ride across, you can like more efficiently take him down. What do you guys think about this boss, Joe?
I enjoyed this boss. I kind of like how he like swarms you. He has another move when, like after he's like gotten off the beach ball, where he takes off his head and another head grows back, and he takes off the other head and then just chunks them at you, and then those heads
Mm-hmm.
become sentient and start hopping around like, and they do little charge attacks towards you, and you have to hit him in between the times when he doesn't have a head
Yes.
to the point where you can stun him. I I don't know. I think it's creative, I guess. I enjoyed it. I like when you get to a point later in the boss where there's just like 30 heads that are all trying to swarm you at once. I don't know, I just think it's fun.
Yeah, that was it was really like creepy being swarmed like that because I don't know if you could tell, but whenever he pulls off one of the heads, instead of it just being like an empty hole like a doll, there's like a flat face there that's like a
Yeah.
really hideous face, and it's really gross and terrifying.
Hmm.
The swarming is cool because it makes you feel kind of like frantic and panic because you're trying to fight them off, especially if you're trying to like dodge his like ball bomb attack.
Hmm.
I will say it's a little annoying because after you beat Clown around down, he like gets the little birds above his head, and you have to like pick him up and do a mad move to actually deal any damage. And the pickup animation doesn't have invincibility frames. And so sometimes if you're being swarmed too bad, but you're trying to get damage in on the main boss, you'll try to pick him up and then just get like punched. And then as soon as you get punched, it's over, and you have to do like another like cycle of its
Hmm.
phase. I guess you could just say like, well, you should do a better job like fighting off the swarms, but especially like the last couple of hits, it got a little frustrating just because I feel like I didn't have any room to breathe. Ryder, what do you think?
I don't really, I don't think I had much trouble with this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really even remember having to face the swarm because I think that I accidentally maybe might have killed myself and it spawned me on the other edge, and so I never even had to fight the swarm. So whoops. But I mean, kind of going into
Gamer.
that. This is a point where I feel conflicted because I'm glad this game did not make me restart every time I died, because it probably ruined a lot of the minute enjoyment that I get from this. But like, there's no punishment. I died during this fight like once to actual attacks, and then I accidentally, I think I fell off and killed myself, or I fell off and it just took like a heart and placed me back up on the ledge. But again, there's no real punishment for anything. So I didn't really have any incentive to try not to die or to try harder. I like the aesthetic of all of it, but and I enjoyed the fight on its own. But just thinking about it was almost too easy. And I guess you make the argument it's a children's game, but there are children's games that are harder. I think a good example, and you might disagree, but the Sly Cooper boss fights at some point were difficult, and they did have actual punishments for failing to complete whatever it may have been appropriately.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Then speaking of boss fights, we get to the last boss of this section. It's the big boss of World War II. It's my favorite boss of this section. It was the Dual Dragon. I want to hear you talk about this first, Joe.
I don't know if it's the aesthetic or something, but I don't much care for this boss that much. But maybe it's also just because you can just have him constantly hit himself and then finish the fight in like a minute or two. But
that's what. Sorry, I know I said I'd let you talk. I was just saying that's why I liked it. I just couldn't help but jump in right there. I liked the boss fight because most of the other boss fights, the ones that are a little more creative, like the sandworm or the round a clown or clown around, whatever, they're very much like there are you can hit me phases and there are you can't hit me phases. But with this one, those phases only exist if you let them exist.
Yeah.
Like if you're strategic, your attacks are well timed, and you like move around the environment like skillfully, then like you said, Joe, you can get them in an endless loop where they're just constantly taking damage and not actually being able to like have their dodge me phase. And I liked that a lot.
I guess something about that just felt like, I guess it felt repetitive because it would just be like he does fire attack, I go and hit the other one, and they do like the sponge ball attack, and then I hit the other one, and it repeats that like 6 times, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
So maybe I just like didn't see much of the boss fight to him because I know he has like a tail attack or something too, and I just didn't.
Yeah, if you get too close, he'll hit you with the tail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they could have used more variety. Maybe if I hadn't done the first big boss incorrectly, I wouldn't have been so impressed by this one. Because the first one just felt like a bullet sponge to me, and I was so worried that all the big bosses were just going to be like punch a whole bunch and don't get hit. And so this one had it had a pattern that I could read, and I was able to quickly formulate a strategy that allowed me to basically be invincible. It felt very rewarding. Like, obviously it's a children's game. It's not like a ton of thought went into my preparations to beat him, but it felt like I actually was rewarded for like learning its patterns rather than just dodging and then pressing B.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any strong opinions?
It was fine.
That's pretty good.
I didn't.
The most positive thing he said the whole time.
Yeah, probably. I didn't dislike this boss fight. It just. It was nothing special to me. I think I died more times to like falling in the water myself, like just getting too close to the edge and not realizing I was at the edge. I like the idea of it, like the fact that you have the enemy deals damage to itself. That was kind of fun. But I don't really have strong opinions one way or the other. Most of the boss fights in this game I've been pretty okay about, and I really like the first world boss, the mama alligator in the bikini. That was fun. But like I said, the rest of these have just been pretty much indifferent too. Like it much better than the rest of the game. This is where like the beat 'em up portion actually comes in, and I think does a pretty okay job of letting me have fun and letting me kind of explore the interesting parts of the beat 'em up. The bosses are varied enough to where it's, like I said, it's kept me interested because I really live for the boss fights. I don't care about anything in between, but I look forward to see like what wacky design the next boss is going to be, or if there's going to be some cool way that I have to take them down.
Here's your quote for the back of the box, Wario World. Quote, I live for the boss fights. Right.
Yeah.
On that positive note, I think that's a good place to wrap up, unless you guys had something else you wanted to say.
I think so. I guess we could point out that at least the character designs have been pretty good in this game. I do like the way that they reskin all the enemies to match the environments that they have, and the boss designs are like clever or unique.
Yeah, the art direction is just really good. Like it's kind of weird, but I really like it. It feels like you're, like Ryder was talking about, in this weird, like, manipulated, like, dream world, rather than just like, oh, I'm in a forest, or oh, I'm in a desert. It's more interesting than that.
So, I want to talk about that for just a bit. I'm not going to go into like super deep detail because I think that I'll probably have more to say about this in the next episode as like a kind of closing remarks about my feelings about the game. But so you have, again, with platformers, I'm going to go back to this example. Mario is boring. I like the 2D Mario, that is. 3D Mario, not as much. But like when I think about like Mario world design, a lot of the times the worlds are pretty much, they're very, very similar. You can play through Mario World 1 from level 1 to level 8, and it feel pretty much the exact same, with maybe a little bit more difficulty, maybe a little bit of a change in characters or the enemies. But as far as like the level design itself from a like artistic perspective or like scenery, there's not like a huge difference. Donkey Kong Country does an amazing job of like each world feeling, every one of those games, of feeling contained and feeling like an individual world while having lots of variety inside of the world. Some levels you might go from platforming to like swimming to climbing before the end of the end of the world, or before the end of that single level. And this allows for really cool things like artistically, where you get to see sunken ships, and then you get to climb up on maybe the ship's mast, and other things like that. This game, the first world feels consistent, kind of like in a Mario way, where you start off in like this forest, and it's prehistoric forest with dinosaurs and stuff like that, and then the next one is like this river jungle ruin thing, and that kind of makes sense as well aesthetically. And then the last level is a boss fight against like an alligator or a crocodile, and that all kind of fits together. The second world, it's scary, I guess, but it doesn't make any sense like aesthetically. Like it feels so ham-fisted. So the first level is Haunted Mansion. The second level, okay, the first level is Haunted Mansion. The second level is a circus, which these things are, I guess, spooky individually. And then the last one is a freaking dragon lizard monster thing, sea serpent.
In a swamp.
And it's like, what? How? I guess the swamp is supposed to be scary. But like those three things do not work well together. So it took like the Donkey Kong variety thing and just like souped it up and went the complete wrong way with it. Where like these things kind of make sense individually as being scary, but aesthetically just didn't make any sense together. And like, the very first level in the spooky one is a Haunted Mansion, like I said, and it has dinosaur bones, I guess. Okay, whatever. And then the next one, they just kind of throw out the dinosaurs, and they're like, it's actually just going to be clowns and like an elephant, but we're still going to put the little tank turtle dude that's a dinosaur that shoots bombs at you. And like, I don't know, it feels like there are a lot of ideas that were just kind of thrown into a hat, and they just kind of drew from them. And like, I understand that this is probably like this isn't even the B team or the C team. This might be a D team developer. That I don't know. Maybe that sounds
These are
awful.
people, Ryder.
They are people, but I can say that it's a 18-year-old game. So this game can vote. So this game deserves to be put down. I don't know. When call a spade, it's sloppy. It feels sloppy, and there's no consistency as far as, like I said, the aesthetics or like level design in this second world. And maybe it'll just be one of those things where I'm like, okay, well, the next World 3 and 4, they do make sense together. But it feels like something where they just kind of threw it together like last second, or like they wanted a spooky world, but they didn't know how to make it flow from one to the other. And there's other examples of things like in the original Dark Souls game. The first 2/3 of that game are absolutely amazing, and the last third of that game, they ran out of time. And so they just went and copy and pasted enemies into a lot of these areas. They're completely unfinished areas. And this is what it feels like. Knights of the Old Republic 2, exact same thing. That they weren't able to meet a deadline. And so the last third of the game really hurts because of it. And this isn't the last third of the game, but I wonder if this was the world that got the shaft because either creatively they didn't know what they wanted to do with it, monetarily they just didn't have the money to put into it, or time they couldn't do it because they had to meet publishing demands. And maybe it's none of those things. I don't know. I didn't like it.
Well, on that positive note, thank you all so much for watching this episode. Huh?
I think we should have ended on the positive note.
No. Stop ruining the outro.
We have to have one game that we don't all agree on that is a good game. And this is going to be the game.
I didn't think that War for the Overworld or Sly Cooper were particularly great games, to be fair. Stop messing up my outro. Here we go. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Backlog Crew on Wario World. We're going to do part 2 soon, and it's going to just be the rest of the game. Presumably 2 worlds and like a final boss, but who knows? They might pull, hopefully not, but they might pull a whole another world out at the very end that we don't know exists. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please join us next time, where every time Ryder says the words Wario Land 4, we're going to take a shot. Thanks. Bye.